Hello. Okay, welcome. Oh, yeah, someone coming in. Welcome, Tiffany. So, I want to first start off with thank you for coming out tonight. I have my guest speaker here, Terri Hamilton from Mystic Muse by Terri. She's also a psychic medium and a card reader and animal communicator. Just to let you know that. And you can connect with her. I'll include her information down below. But Terri, I want to let people know, how did we meet and how did we bonded over this?
Well, it's so cool. So I get this email, saying, hey, are you interested in learning how to create a spiritual wellness business? And I was like, this is kind of interesting because it was like right time and right place. And I went on to like, what's a free thing? And I decided to sign up and we realized together, you don't know how I got that email. I don't know how I got that email, but the email just came, which, to me, that's the work of spirit. That is saying, okay, when you're ready, people are going to show up in your life. And I was fortunate enough to be the only person. So during you and I have garnered such what I feel like is this really precious friendship in the course of me learning. Yeah.
Yeah. And then when we were got a lot of one-on-one time with each other, and eventually start sharing what you're going on through, what's going on in life, and you were talking about taking care of your mom and on that journey. And it was her, probably not quite like the last final days, but it's getting there. And I remember asking you, because your mom has dementia or Alzheimer's.
Yes. Yes.
And I remember asking you, like, oh, you're taking care of her. Do you have to roll the body every 2 hours? And that's a question you don't ask anyone. If you only ask that question when when someone's been through it already. And
Yeah.
it just, I was like, I've been there. My mom became a vegetable. So, before she died. And so we had to take care of her and had to hire some part-time help while we could, for some shifts and everything. And that's how we bonded. And we talked more about how
Yes.
there's just a lot mentally, emotionally,
So
and then just a lack of sleep, and you're exhausted just on all fronts. And I didn't have so much of the caregiver because my mom was already unconscious, and so it was just more of like waiting to die. And then that's how I started doing a funeral planning guide for myself. But then I realized, like, no one really knows this stuff. When someone dies, you just panic. And then the funeral home, they don't give you as much detail as you need, just
mhm.
like the basics. But like Terri, she's been creating her own like guide on how to take care of a loved one, or like if you hire nurses or nurse aides to come and help, here is a template for like what they need to know about because we might think like, oh, shouldn't they know? But every individual is different. So Terri, actually,
Mm.
it's funny. I created my own funeral guide, but Terri made the guide that you do before they die. So,
It
and
worked out.
it worked out. She's like part A and part B. I was like, you know what? It's so exhausting to do all this, and we wish we had this probably when given to us when we were going through it. And
Well,
we're
that
like,
was
that's
one
why.
of the
Mhm.
that was one of the conversations that we had, was that we were going through this and we didn't know what to do or what to expect because no one talks about it. Like no one
Right.
talks about it.
Everyone talks about weddings, so you know how to plan a wedding,
Yep.
but no one talks about this. And so it's like, even later on in life, when you meet anyone watching, if you meet someone that's going through this, please share these free resources, which I'll link in under the YouTube video too. But just share it with them, because it will help them tremendously. So yeah, so I'm gonna hand it off to Terri, because you got the portion A, the part before they pass away, but very, very helpful. Yeah.
Yay. All right. So just a little bit about me. You gave me a really wonderful intro. So yes, I'm Mystic Muse by Terri. And I'm a mother and grandmother. So I have had my gift all my life. Of course, with kids, it kind of comes into play, especially when you know they're doing something that they're not supposed to be doing. And I decided to give in, to let go and let spirit lead me. And so for the past 3 years, I've been actually honing in my gift. And so what you're seeing today is the reinvention of me. And the new me decided to start a business called Mystic Muse by Terri, and I offer readings and insights. And I always say, there's nothing that I do that any of you can't do. So it is this beautiful journey that I'm embarking on, and hoping that people will walk that journey with me. And then, it's about healing. It's about healing ourselves. When we heal ourselves, we actually heal everyone around us. So that's who I am in a nutshell.
Perfect. And Jay, sorry you're late. Don't worry about it. We kind of just got started about the just intro and things like that, and how Terri and I kind of got connected through just bonding over how we had to take care of our moms. She is currently still taking care of her mom right now, during her last end of life. So, yeah, and Terry's just created a whole entire resource for people that if they're going through it right now, if they're the caregiver or if they're about to be the caregiver, like all these things that would help them. So, and then Terry happens to be also a psychic medium, animal communicator, and a card reader. So yeah. Okay, and then Terry, I think you should be able to share on your screen. Did you want me to pull it up for you, or did you want to pull up the packet? Okay.
I am ready. Let me share that screen. Let me know when you can see it.
Yep, totally see it.
Okay, so what I've been going through with my mom is really, how do you handle end of life care? And for the past 8 years, my mom has had dementia. It's a progressive illness, if you know anything about it. The decline can be rapid or slow. Hers happened to be slow. So there was a lot of time in which I was in and out of the courts and working with my lawyers to help me to do the things that needed to be done to become a caregiver. And that's how I came up with this caregiving plan. So in this plan, the idea is not only to outline how you're going to care for the person, but also to make the person come to life in it. And I think it's really important that we humanize the people that we're taking care of, our loved ones. So at the forefront, there is a table of contents, which you can click and go to any section that you want to go to. The first is the why. Why do a care plan? Why is this important? And so I took the time to define why this care plan is important, why I was the person to do it, and what they were going to see in the blueprint that I'm giving them. So this is a freebie for you, and you will have an opportunity to put in, if you choose to use it, put in your information and bring your loved one to life and the care that you're going to give to them. And so in here, we talk about an advanced care directive. Hopefully your loved one has one. That's very important because you never know when they're not going to be able to say what they want. So having that in advance is a real bonus. And I was actually really fortunate that my mother did a revocable living trust. A living trust functions as a separate entity. And unlike a will can be contested, it can be held up in courts forever. So she had a living trust, and I was able to pull from the living trust exactly what she wanted to be done in the case of her being incapacitated. So there's space for that there. And then, of course, I put an image of her when she was young. It's really sweet. Then comes the in-home care plan. this is an important part of the care plan because it really does define what it is that's going to be actively done in the home to care for your loved one. And so for me, I was hiring caregivers, I was hiring independent contractors as caregivers. So they were paid an hourly rate. And I also did an agency. You might be wondering why I chose to do both. When you work with an agency, it is costly. However, if someone didn't show up or if something happened, the agency had an influx of professionals that could come in and fill that space until that person came back. I also want to just say a side note. It took a good 3 months to 4 months to build the care team that was right for my mom. And that's something that people don't talk about. It's important that the caregivers and your loved ones mesh together because when you're talking about the last days of their life, last year, last days, whatever the case may be, you want that to be a comfortable space. You want it to be a loving space. And you also want to trust the people that are giving your mother care. And so it took about 3 to 4 months to build that care team, but wow, what an amazing care team they were. So this basically outlines what my expectations are of the care team, and then also outlines what the cost would be. So anyone that looks at it gets a picture of what that cost in monthly, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, yearly would be. And then, of course, an important part of the care plan is that budget. So it's not about being exact, but it's about giving an idea of what that budget looks like. What does it look like for food-wise, for supplies for the house? My mother's been in hospice, and so hospice takes care of most of the supplies that she needs for her body. But there are other supplies or times when the supplies don't come in where we have to do that. So that's something that we put into the budget, that we looked ahead and said, we need to make sure that we have the ability to pick up where things may fall. And then we took a look at what the monthly cost of that would be. And that tells us with a set amount of income, how many months of this level of care my mother would get. Then of course comes the financing plan. And so I always think that it's best to give a couple of options. Now, when I did this was for a court setting. You may not need that. So it would be up to you in terms of what you want. But I always think a good fail-safe is, I think, so at least a plan A and plan B to fall back on. And then it talks about, the approximate monthly cost and how many months that care will be given. Of course, COVID. So I wanted to make sure to outline what we would do for COVID protocols because we had staff, we had bath nurses and a hospice nurse and doctors coming in at different times, including the caregivers. So we wanted to make sure not only my mom was in a safe environment, but everyone else in the household was safe too. So we decided to define that as per CDC guidelines. And at the end, I put some examples of how my record keeping would look. So there's a monthly budget of records. Side note, I did not do that one. It was just way too much work. To be honest, I just did a basic spreadsheet and I keep it all on a spreadsheet. Very important to have some means of keeping records. And then we document every day what is done for my mother. So should the court ask, I have all that information every day of her care. Who was caring for her, what happened, what she ate, when she moved her bowels. I mean, it gets that specific, because you never know when that information will be needed, what medications she got and when she took them. And then I also did a weekly meal plan because I actually did meal planning for my mom. I cooked every week. I still do cook every week for her. So just something to plan that out so the caregivers understand what's being given at each meal. And, you know, of course, the grocery list of what we run out of. So apple juice is my mom's thing. So we need to know when we need to pick some more up so she doesn't run out of everything. And that's the end of this document in a nutshell. And I'm going to stop sharing for right now. In a nutshell, it's about being organized, and the more organized you are up front, the easier it is for you because other things begin to come in. And you want to be able to attend to those things that come in that you're not expecting. That means that what you have in place is steady and firm. So I want to just take a pause here and ask, do I see a question?
Yes.
I
Johnny
missed
asked, what
that.
would the now you tell you the then you about this journey to ease your way? What a good question.
That's a good question. The now me would say, I know this sounds weird, but learn to let go. Once you have everything in place, you got to trust it's in place. Learn to let go and really allow yourself to be supported by those around you. I cannot do what I do without my family, without my friends who have given so much support. And there are people out there that give support. The hospice company, the first thing they asked me when they came out was, how are you? They support me every single day. So that's what I would say. Once you get that all in place, let it go. Trust. And then allow that support to come and carry you.
That's great. Thank you for that. And I think to maybe give people an idea also of the care team and the cost of it, it can range so drastically. My family is from Virginia, so the rates there, and depending on what company you look at, it's different. So just for anyone that's listening in, yes, maybe insurance might cover like supplies, things like that, maybe a nurse to come and give them a bath once a week or something like that, depending on the insurance plan. But if you need someone that's more of like, hey, my mom needs care or my dad needs care like every single day, and I'm too busy to watch him, or I have a full-time job, I can't do it, that's where you might most likely have to pay out of pocket.
Yes.
And it's like per hour, like that. So for you, how much, like roughly in the ballpark in Los Angeles, did it cost with, I guess, the team or the person that you hired or nurse aide per hour? Because for me in Virginia, it was very low. I didn't know what the industry rate is, but in Virginia, we went through an agency and they charged $25 an hour for a nurse aide.
That's great. So with the agency, because agency price is different. So when you work with an agency, they charge hourly for their aides, but you pay the agency and they pay the aides that come, or the nurses that come out. Day shift for me was $37.50 an hour. Night shift was $45 an hour. So what I opted to do, and this is right in the pocket of what the cost of care is in Los Angeles, go online and research what it says for your area. You can find out what the typical cost is. And I just Googled it. Now I opted to only have the agency for 5 days a week, and I brought in my own weekend staff. My weekend staff, I did pay them $37.50, but that was just the hourly rate, whether they were day or night. And I want to also say that my mother came to me in such an acute state that I needed to pay a little bit more. It's a little bit over what the average is because of the level of care that needed to be given. She came to me from an emergency room where she was basically given about 2 weeks to live. It's been a year and 3 months because of the level of care. So, yeah, that's pretty much what it costs. If you look at what I pay monthly, just under $30,000 a month for her care. And home care can be very costly. And that is not including food or supplies for the house, like, or bills.
Yeah. So, thank you for all that information, all like the little tips that you've learned along the way. I'll continue with part 2 here when they did die. Sorry, sometimes with death, I gotta have some sort of humor here.
Thank God.
Okay, so in the resource Google Drive, I let you guys, I'll post. This is my end of life and funeral planner. And pretty much there's a few scenarios they give here. So here it's more of like if your loved one has 2 months left to live or something like that, you have some time to prepare, then these are the things. It's like, hey, some tips that I figured might help you get ready. I feel like it's ideal because you have time to be like, hey, mom, dad, or partner, like, what do you want? Right. So that's that. So it goes from like funeral planning, the caskets, or even just obituary, things like that. And then and what the job of funeral director is, they do only to a certain point. So really it's just anything has to do with funeral. But when it comes to like church arrangements, that's you deal with the church, or if it comes with it's yeah, so they're there to help you, but not in full on mode. As you will see, there's a lot more to take care of. And then there's this other scenario here. If a loved one passes away, heart attack, stroke, car accident, something like that. And this is where you can follow along the list of what to do. Because, do you call 911? Do you call, a funeral home first? Things like that. And so this is what will happen where the funeral director will help you with what needs to be done or what the doctor needs to do to fill out paperwork. If law enforcement needs to be called, depending on how they passed away. And it kind of goes really step by step, pretty detailed. It's a lengthy document though for funeral arrangements and everything. And also sometimes when you're in this mode, it's really hard to think, I found. And so it's just, sometimes you're like, I don't know. When people say, do you need help with anything? In your head, you're like, I don't know what I can tell you to do. I don't know what what needs to be done. So this is just, there's a list of ideas you can ask for help, whether it's food or I just realized I have a typo, or even like flowers or just anything, making sure you're fed, things like that. Right. And I think with thank you letters and stuff like that, that's really optional. Cause in my opinion, like the funeral and all that stuff is so it's so much that just having another task on top of sending thank you letters and stuff like out, like it can be too much. So I always want to say like that is optional if you want to do that. And then obviously the unfun things, the documents and stuff like that, what the funeral director might need, or even the lawyers might need if it gets to that point, or dealing with the banks. So it has what paperwork you need to find. So it has all that like right here. So after the funeral, this is all the stuff that people don't tell you and you just have to figure out yourself. So it's, if they have a lawyer, then or if you need a lawyer on how to deal with the house or how that works, post office stuff, all these things like Social Security, Medicare, banks, their credit cards, all these that you have to notify and take care of. So in case your brain can't think in the moment, here's a list of all this so you can kind of check it off or even ask someone to help you to do it. This is something when I was my mom and dad, they just had so many accounts. And so I asked some family members to help me with this and get it all sorted and get things on auto pay because my parents are old fashioned. They did checkbooks for everything. So, and my mom did all the bills and my dad didn't touch anything. So he didn't even know what was going on. So that's what happened in my scenario here. Let's see here. There's a lot more again, like stocks, all that kind of stuff. So, and this is other tips that I learned along the way. This I did make this back in 2015. So this lump sum death payment benefit, it might be a different amount. It might not be $255 anymore. So there's that. Death certificates, what do you do with those? How many copies do you need? And for us, we ordered maybe, I think, 10 copies, but a lot of places like banks or, insurance or like stocks and stuff, they usually are fine with a photocopy of it. I think there was only one that wanted original copy, just the heads up. So in Virginia, as of 2015, it's about $12 per death certificate. So yeah, that costs money too. Let's see here. And then, so with, obviously I'm going to say this is to always get a legal professional for advice and stuff. So me and Terri, we can only talk about our personal experiences, but for an executor, I believe it's that person that hopefully your parents choose someone like a responsible child or someone that's a bit organized to pretty much execute everything from your will, right? So, but the thing is, even Terri mentioned earlier, the will, this is something I learned not from Google, but just through word of mouth, through friends that, like a friend that lost her mom. And she was saying how look into, be open to looking into what's called, like what Terri mentioned earlier, a living trust. Because with a will, I talked with, we got a lawyer and I talked to them and they said, actually, a will doesn't do much. It's difficult to kind of get things sorted. So let's say my parents both die. And if they only had a will, we would have to hire our own lawyer. And then I have to go through probate. And it's like a whole length process, like maybe 1 year to get all their assets to me. So I can't even get the money in their bank account to me. I can't get to pay for their own funeral, or what to deal with the house. So, but a living trust, they said, and I had to pay the lawyer to draft up a living trust. And a living trust is pretty much, imagine it like, just imagine an account, and that in that account is the house and everything. And that living trust, once my parents die, that living trust just gets dispersed to me and my brother, like immediately. There's no like 1 year waiting period and all that stuff. So that's something that most people don't talk about. Everyone knows about a will, but they've never heard about really a living trust, which makes things so much easier. But again, talk with a professional lawyer for your personal situation. And then even earlier, Terri was mentioned about medical directive. So that is the person, or I guess like could be your kid, whatever, that they are the ones that say pull the plug. So if they're like, what do we do with mom or dad? Pull the plug. And usually, so you need, or your parents or whatever needs to designate someone in their paperwork to be like, this is the person that's going to be the one that's going to say, please pull the plug. Or if I'm not conscious, I can't speak, they will make decisions for me. So that's another thing too. And this one is a little worksheet where you can collect the information about whoever is about to pass. Usually the funeral director will ask this from you. Not exactly this funeral worksheet. They'll give you a worksheet just like this that looks pretty much similar, asking all this information. And this one here is more of when you speak with your loved one about, hey, how would you like to pass away? Would you like, cremation? Would you like a memorial? Would you like a full-on funeral? That kind of stuff. So if they're open, you guys can do this worksheet together. My dad was pretty easy. I was just like, do you want to be cremated, buried? And he's like, cremated is cheaper. And I was like, all right, thanks, Dad. It was pretty straightforward, things like that. You want, a Catholic funeral, that kind of stuff. So, and then again, musicians, this might not apply to everyone because some of it is like religious, if it's applicable to you or not. And yeah, and then at the end, yep, these are all extra notes. Okay. So that's the funeral package for you. So yeah, I hope that it's a lot, but at least you'll be prepared. Or even when it hits you, you can look at it and be like, what else do I need to do? And you just check off the list. So there's
One of
that.
the things that I love about your funeral packet, because when you shared it with me, I was like, yeah, some of these things I know, but there's so much little detail in there that I was not aware of, where I was like, okay. And knowing it ahead of time even helps the process to go easier, because when you're in the midst of, whomever, whatever loved one dying, you're not always going to be in the right mind to be able
Right.
to do that. So, so
Exactly.
helpful. Thank you so much for
Oh, thank you.
that.
And actually, now we're just going to chat a little bit about, Terry, what you and I talked about. And we talked about living trust in the will. And I know, like for me, I have a sibling, and when my parents, this is just a heads up for people that when my dad dies, there's a house that's left. And so for him, he wants it 50-50, split between us. And it can, I know for different families, or if you have 6 kids, things like that, just give me a heads up, it can get messy. Like parents, they do want to split their assets, but when it comes to a house, it's not like you get $5, you get $5, and usually sometimes maybe someone has to buy the other person out. So, and that's just a heads up that we were talking about that can happen as well.
Yes.
Um,
Um, the
yeah, go
other
ahead.
thing that I wanted to point out was you'd mentioned power of attorney. So important to have not only, someone designated to make the health choices for you in the case of you being incapacitated, but also having a power of attorney. I wanted to just compare, like I'm a conservative for my mother. The conservator does not have as many rights as a power of attorney. So, whether it's your loved one or if you're planning for your own, that power of attorney can do many more things. Institutions in this country recognize the power of attorney easier and give more rights to it than if you're a conservator. So that's also something to keep in mind, is having or designating a power of attorney.
And usually they're the ones that if you have, you need to go to the banks and be like, hey, I'm their power of attorney, I need access to this. Uh, it does, I think in my guide, it might say it's easier though if your parents ahead of time put your name on their bank account already. And this is where the iffy part comes, because if you're a parent and you give it to a kid and you say, like, hey, I want to put my son, my daughter on this bank account, your son and daughter, if they wanted to, they can go and just take out all the money if they want to be that kid. So there's like pros and cons. You kind of have to look and be like, which one's like the good, responsible child? That'd be ideal, but not every child is like that. so, so yeah.
And what my mom always said, which was brilliant, she said, designate 2 people. If you have 2 people, there's a fail safe. And that again is a personal preference. If you have 2 people, it's a good way to go because there has to be agreement between the 2 people.
Yeah. And then another thing is, before you mentioned to me, Terry, about keeping receipts and keeping records along the
Yes,
way.
so important. That way there are no questions when we're going to talk about this, a sucky sibling come questioning everything. I have the receipts, I have, the data, I have everything. So anyone can take a look at it and see exactly what it is that happened, whether it's the money that got put out, where the money was placed, what was bought, how it was used, all those, just loading it in on a spreadsheet, every time you do it is a humongous, humongous fail safe.
Did you have like how do you think would be you find ways that would be easy, or maybe it's not, to have conversations with parents about, hey, mom and dad, you're getting old, but it'd be nice if we talked about this, so it'll make our lives easier. Because some people are scared of talking about fear, or like we mentioned before the session about the switching of parent child dynamic roles, you know.
We did, yes.
Parents sometimes they're like, no, you're always going to be my child, but when they get older, the child end up being the parent and taking care. Or culture plays a thing.
Yes, it
So,
does. Yes,
mhm.
it does. It's a great question because I know you said you could just ask your dad right up front, and he's
My
like, "Oh,
mom wasn't like that. I know.
ooh,
So
my
it's like,
mom wasn't." I tried with my mom, and she got very upset with me. But I probably went about it the wrong way too, because I just asked right out. I think you have to really approach it from a softer point of view of asking, is this a conversation that you're ready to have? Is it something that you would be willing to write down or schedule a conversation with me? I think it's important. I want to know what your wishes are. Um, Coming about it from that point of view may help to lessen the blow, and to soften the conversation that would ensue. Um, I think it goes down to really understanding your loved one, knowing, how they feel and what if they're afraid, you might get a little blowback, so how can you go in and alleviate that? How can you go in and support that?
yeah. And sometimes maybe having a third party there might help.
Yes.
Just to, because sometimes parents don't want to blow up in front of that third party, but when it's just the parent and the child, they will happily blow up in front of their child sometimes, it gets heated.
Yes.
Whereas a third party can be like kind of like a referee. So
Mhm.
that's something, well, like even when my dad and I went to the lawyer's office, he was being like, oh, I want it this way. Then the lawyer's like, I understand, but in the 1% chance that you are not conscious, we need to put this in place, so, and that kind of, made my dad be like, okay, I understand, instead of, because sometimes parents don't want to listen to their child, even though the child's saying the same exact thing.
Sometimes they
Um,
don't.
and I
And
like what
I
Johnny, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was also going to say if they're open to recording it, record it. Two reasons. Then you have exactly what they say. So there's no, if, ands, or buts. You have it in their voice, what they say, and you can go from there in case anything happens. But, also it's a fail safe if you can't have a second person there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I like what Johnny wrote here. I found it best practice to do accounting and receipt collecting as you go instead of when it's needed. Incremental tracking can save a ton of headaches. 100%. It's
Yeah.
better to keep up with your bills than at the end of the year and your tax accountant is like, hey, where's everything? So totally agree.
Right.
Uh, Also, another thing I want to touch on is asking for help, because most likely, if we're in this, you're watching this, you're probably in a caregiver role or you're gonna be in a caregiver role. And um, I think the hardest part is people are willing to help. They want to help. They're just, but sometimes it's awkward for, they don't want to trigger you, or they don't want to say like, they don't know what to say. Sometimes people if they've not gone through this, then they don't know what to say. So what I found that can be helpful is sending out maybe just a text or message to say like, hey guys, this is what I'm going through. Here's a list of things I need help with. And that way, and it could be anything from like running errands, or even like I was trying to think of ideas for Terri, being like, oh, someone can swing by and watch your mom for 4 hours so you can shower, so you can run errands, or you can, or maybe they can pick things up for you. I've had people say it was helpful when someone just sent them Uber gift cards, because Uber Eats gift cards, so they can just order whatever they want to eat without thinking, because they were just too tired to cook for that day or after the funeral. So when you give a list of people, of things to people, like I need this fixed in my house, or you never know, a friend might be a plumber, or I could use some meals, or you know obviously money is always good, or just someone to come and talk to, so my mind can not be so sad or racing for at least like 2 hours, and people can sign up and be like, hey, I'm free, I want to help out, I'm good at this, I can help out with that. So I found out that could be really helpful, because people can kind of choose based on what they're good at, or what their strengths are, where they're able to help. Versus, I think for me, in the past, I've asked for help for something specific, like, hey, Bobby, do you think you can help with my dad or mom's insurance thing? And they couldn't help me. They're like, I don't know how to do that. And I felt so, like so frustrated and just kind of like hopeless in a way. But instead, looking back now, probably would have been like, here's a whole list. anyone help me where you can. I don't know what your strengths are, but if you're good at this, that way. So I found that to be maybe helpful. Just a little tip.
That question was really poignant because I remember when you asked me that question, and the first thing that came to my mind was like, I don't know what I want. I don't know what to ask for. And so I don't even know how to respond. And I think, in a lot of ways, when you're placed in a situation that is foreign to you and you're trying to figure it out, you don't know exactly what to ask for. But what helped was knowing that someone asked me if I needed anything and was available to me, and um, that way when I did figure it out, I know I can call Train. I can ask my husband, I can ask my kids, and I know that they'll be there for me. So important. It goes back to in the beginning when I said it's so important that you get that support system going because you're going to need it. You're going to need it.
Yeah. And sometimes we ask for help way down the road when we can't handle it anymore. And that's when we start to burn out, crash,
Good
get really
point.
low instead of like, hey, I just give you a heads up. My mom's dying, my dad's dying. I'm probably gonna need support. Here are ways you can help. Are there any questions you guys have for us? I know we covered a lot. And you can reach out. Like you reach out to me if this, when that time comes and you're like, what what did you do during this time? Like Terri and I both know what it's like. So you know, reach out to us if this happens, if your parents or loved ones at the end of their life. It's not easy. It's rough. It's rough, but the people help. Oh, how do you manage self-care? Oh, good question.
Wow.
Do you? Do we?
That's such a great question. Manage, do we want to say manage, or is it kind of like self-care when it happens?
Oh man. I think, man, looking back, I feel like for me, it felt like a bomb blew off. And so everyone's running. And until the dust has settled, then then it hit me. And I remember thinking I was the crisis manager after the bomb, like a person that comes in, we're like, okay, guys, you guys got left wing, I got right wing. And, but then when you leave for the day and all the dust has settled, that's when I actually finally cried. And I was like, I can't, because I was holding it for everyone. I was the project manager for everyone. Um, and then after that was when I was able to be like, okay, now I can cry. Now I need to go to talk to people. That's when I actually revealed to my friends that my mom was dying, or it was dead already. And then, you know, therapy and things like that. So for me, that's how, like in that mode, it was really for me. And I think depending on the death, that's maybe how it is, just being able to finally catch your breath at the very end. And it also depends on what role you play. Like this one, my brother didn't really help out much. So I had to do everything. My dad didn't know what to do. So it was, I didn't feel like I could be a spectator for this death. Yeah. So self-care came way after.
So I'm going to ask that same question that Johnny asked before. What would now you say to then you?
Honestly, I don't know. I really don't know. I would have to think about that because I mean, I love yours where it's like, let go, but yeah, I really don't know because looking back, I'm like, I always think, could I have done something different? And I don't think I could have, given the nature of the situation. Sometimes you think like, did I help out too much and all that stuff? I was like, I couldn't sit back. My dad didn't know what to do. My brother wasn't going to help. So, um, I did lean on people, but it was after. Maybe I could have leaned on like what you said, like sooner, but maybe select people and
Mhm.
being okay to be, I guess, vulnerable and just ask for support sooner. Yeah,
Mhm.
I think that would probably be it, maybe.
That's key.
Hmm.
That, that's hard to be the point person,
Yeah.
you
I think
know?
it's also sometimes hard because you don't know what's going to happen next. And you don't want to tell people until until you have definitive answers.
Right.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So I think it's like you don't want to, I didn't want to ask for help yet, maybe. I did ask for help for certain things, but I think maybe the emotional help. I didn't ask for that until I was like, until I could, until I finished managing this big project. And then I was like, okay. And then when I met up with friends, that's when it had like it all happened, all the tears and everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Ask for support sooner. It doesn't hurt. The worst is they can't support you in that moment. But yeah, I guess so. I'd say like ask for some help here and there soon. Emotional support.
Mhm.
I think I was really good with the admin tactical support, or like helping with that. Like, hey, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you pick me up at the airport? But I think it was, yeah, the emotional support being like, hey, can I talk to you for like 2 hours? Because right, my mom just she's about to die. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
And
So
I think in giving space to those who are not able to be available, like it's okay.
yeah,
You'll know who your person is. You'll know who your person is. And there is always someone.
yeah. Um, so yeah, and you oh, okay, Johnny writes, I have found a frame that helps me poke around to explore topics like what do you wonder? What do you wish for? What do you worry about? Yeah. Really good
Mhm.
reflective questions too. And Micah, Jay, or Nancy, or Tiffany, feel free to put in the chat box or whatever if you have any questions for us about our what we went through or kind of like how did this work?
Right. I do. Well, I'm kind of in that in between stage. Like, my dad passed away back in 2017, and my mom was really organized with things. And, thank God that they had a lot of their stuff in order. So it wasn't chaotic like some other people I've seen. But in regards to what would your past self tell your current, would definitely be find some people like this right now, and that's going to pick up the other half of what your mom took over once she's gone, because she's next. And she's elderly, but she's not at any stage in dementia, and or anything like that. And so I think my question is, do you suggest, because I have two siblings, and they're both younger than me, but out of the two, one, um, you can just kind of count on, it's always going to be the hot mess that's all over the place and crying and just can't get it together and makes it difficult for everyone else. So that being said, I'm clearly aware of what's about to happen. I'm not looking forward to that part of it, but would you suggest, because we fight about ridiculous things now, and so my mom was the one that kind of refereed us when my dad passed, so I'm more worried about once she passes. And I'm sure some of you can relate, as a medium, it becomes difficult sometimes with other siblings when you try to say, like, literally, I'm talking to them. No, you're not. No, you're not. That's not what they said. Just weird stuff, but in the death world. And you're like, so, it can be dramatic. But what I'm wondering is, do you suggest sitting down like with your siblings and your parent now while they're still cognizant and can do all this stuff, or wait and see, depending on the circumstance of them getting sick or getting dementia or even just passing quickly? Like, when's the right time to really sit down, or at least try to ask the other people involved when you should sit down and start this process?
That's a great question. Um, I think that one of the reasons why we wanted to do this event is because like now is the time to have that conversation. I realized going through this with my mother that I haven't really had this conversation with my kids. You know, there was like a little comment of, Mom, what do you want? I said, cremate me. And she said, do you want to be a diamond? I was like, sure, you know, but that's as far as it went. So I think the sooner the better. And you know, train, jump in. But this is a conversation that is not going to happen all at once. It may take some time, and take some time for the sibling to get there. You know, she may have to go through all the chaos before she can get there. And that's okay. That's who she is. That's where she's at, right? We can't expect people to be more than what they are. But I feel like the sooner the better, you know, to start. Just start.
Okay.
Yeah, this I agree 100% wholeheartedly 100%. My mom, she had went in for like surgery near the hip area, and she I think had a stroke after, and they didn't check up on her, so she ended up being brain dead. And at that point it was too late for us to have her sign any papers, and the lawyer was like, it's gonna make it a little bit tricky, but we can still do it. But it was just like, Mom, I told her 3 months before she died, I was like, Mom, on the phone, like, you guys are getting old. We should start, you need to get your paperwork lined up. And I swear when my mom died, I was like, this is what I told you, but she was dead already. Um, so yeah, it makes it harder when they are not able to sign things. So you want to get that all like lined up together. You can also be like, hey, check out this video. They like that of this event I went to, and they both lost or like, you know, one of them lost their parents, and this is the issue they came up with, because, you know, once you're dead, legal, like lawyer wise, it makes it a lot harder because they can't, even though my mom was a vegetable, I couldn't like hold a pen to her hand and sign things off. And this was just like things like bank accounts or like, you know, just simple things. So ASAP, sooner the
Yeah.
better. I agree. Mm-hmm.
And then
And
like when you were talking about dementia, because you know my father didn't pass, but like as far as my in-laws, my grandmother-in-law passed last year and she had dementia, and we weren't really kind of part of, you know, all of the details, because my husband really wasn't ready. But his mom and my mom they're kind of in the same boat, and that's where we split our time is, you know. So I was just texting him saying, you know, I'm going through this, you know, this workshop, and it's a lot, but it's very informative, and I think we need to. But he made a good point. How does that work if someone does have dementia and they're really not cognizant as far as signing things? Like, how does that work?
so it's really hard because it's a progressive thing. So if you don't get in there before their executive functioning goes, it could be all but impossible. Not even to mention like the anger that could come because of, you know, the dementia, which is a very real thing if they don't want to talk about it. What I had to do, so my case is a little different. My mother had a friend who convinced her when her executive functioning wasn't there and she wasn't making good decisions. She convinced her to become a domestic partner. And so I had to go through the court system because this domestic partner began to take all of my mom's money. And I had to go to the court system to become the conservator. Um, Now, if your parent is at a point where they are unable to make those kind of decisions, the first thing that needs to happen is that the doctor needs to designate not only what the illness is, the onset of the illness, but also that they are not able to make those type of decisions. So it's a letter of incapacitation. once you have that, you can go to the courts. And I had to do the conservator route because the domestic partner had fake power of attorneys letters that she used everywhere. So we just got rid of power of attorney and I did the conservator route. But I will say, speak to a lawyer, ask them what for your state, because every state is different. Ask them what are options in your state. But I know the one thing you definitely will need is that letter of incapacitation.
Yeah. And even this is something I ask my friends, even if they're coupled up, because people don't talk about this to each other sometimes. But I say, like, if you are a vegetable, do you want to be kept alive? And the thing is, everyone says no, but people don't have a conversation with each other. So when their loved one dies, they're like, do I keep them alive? Do I not? Even though we know that they don't want to be kept alive, but that would have helped my dad so much on letting go.
Mm-hmm.
And like if they die in the hospital or they're like flatlining, do you resuscitate them or do you not? That's like it's called DNR, do not resuscitate. Do you resuscitate them or not? And I know everyone says, please, if I don't have a good quality of life, if I'm a vegetable, do not keep me alive. Just pull the plug. But people don't have that conversation. So when it happens, you know, so that's if something like that happened to like, you know, your mom and your sister and you, like, even it could be maybe not, you could have a dinner conversation being like, hey, just curious, mom, if you're a vegetable, do you want us to pull the plug? At least you could tell your sister, remember that one time at dinner she wanted to pull the plug. It could be like that, but at least you know, instead of, because when that happens, a lot of times people, some people are like, pull the plug, science wise, it's not working, etc. You know, but for other people, they're hanging on, like, you know, could be for whatever purposes, but they're still hanging on to that person that's already gone. So even that conversation, just like that, helps.
That's a good point because you know, I too have a chaotic sibling that was not ready when my father passed away, was not ready. And, you know, that got into a lot of muck. Also see for your state, just in case, you know, nothing has been done, like my father did not have his everything in order. In the state of California, it's a 50-50 state, so it was basically shared between the two living siblings. And even that, you know, could be difficult. Awareness is so important. Find out what the laws are in your state, what you have access to, what can be done, just in case. Just cover those and be aware.
Nancy, go ahead.
Hi. You know, when we had the lockdown of COVID, and I'm over 70, and I just said, well, I better make a power of attorney in case something should happen to me, and I did. And I did tell my daughter, you're the power of attorney, and you'll make the executive decision. So if it looks like it's irreversible, just go ahead and pull the plug. I flatly said that, and honestly, and so I had another person be a witness of signing the power of attorney as well. So, and I wanted to ask, with that power of attorney, is there an expiration on that? There's no expiration. Okay.
No.
All right. And then I know you said about this, you should have a second person also be making the decision. So my daughter is married now, and her husband seems pretty stable, and I was thinking of adding him to the power of attorney that I currently have. So is that still okay, or should I just draw a new power of attorney?
I think you can add to it. You know, I'm not sure. I'm sure there has to be like a notary and everything involved. If you feel like you trust the two of them implicitly, then yeah, that's good. My mother always gave it's so funny, and she didn't do it, but my mother always gave the suggestion of 2 different households, so that there was the fail safe of,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. I
But if
have
you
to.
don't have that, it's who you trust, who you
Okay.
trust.
Yeah. And Johnny writes, here's a thought. When uncomfortable feelings arise about talking about death, balance that with the vision of feelings of peace and resolution of having the discussion and decisions completed. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And speaking of like power of attorney and all that, so just to give you guys like a ballpark here, this is Virginia though, like Northern Virginia. So our family's like right outside DC. So it cost about, I think about $1,300 for the lawyer to draft up like the living trust, and it's a pretty much a whole document of like there's a living trust for these people. It's gonna be split for this person, this person. This is the power of attorney person, and this is the medical directive person. So all that's about, it was like $1,300, but in the state of Virginia. Don't know what's like for their states and what their rates are, but so that's that. Micah, go ahead.
So before I ask my questions, I just wanted to just FYI for other people that end up watching this, um, because not everybody has a different situation with their finances and what they can afford. And I know with my mom, we found out through her social worker, through her insurance's medical group. Also, insurance's medical group, checking with the medical group to see if there's a social worker. They're very, very helpful, especially if you don't have really any support around you, which I'm kind of in that position. So the social worker is a really big deal. But oh, I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep the thought. Okay, so in case people aren't able to afford that fee for the attorney to do it, there's something called, there's will clinics, which I didn't even know that was a thing. There's will clinics, and they do that free, where they will draw it up and do that. Also, if there's a senior legal services, sometimes they'll do like a scaling. This is in the state of California. Let me just say that. They'll do like a sliding scale fee or for free, just depending. But I know with my mom's senior legal services, she didn't have to cover the full expense when they drew up the power of attorney for her finances. And then the will clinic was able to do her will, and she didn't have to pay for that. So just in case anybody's watching and things are really tight, it's just good to know or ask depending on your state. So my 2 questions were, I don't really know if you guys know about this though, but I also have a sibling that's just really just anything that's difficult. She would be in her picture would be next to that. And so for that reason, I'm trying to do things ahead of time. When my dad passed, it was a huge mess. He didn't put anything in writing. My mom actually tried several years before everything happened. She sent a letter to all the kids, all the siblings. Hey, let's sit down. Let's talk about this. The only people that responded was me and my other sister, who's not here now. And then nothing took place. Nobody chose to discuss it or do anything. But because of what happened with my dad, and experiencing the dynamics of how she chose to act and respond, the crazy communication, the verbal abuse, just everything that was crazy, that acts, everything was emotion, but not logical and reasonable. And when you are having to go about all the things after someone's passed, all of that needs to be checked to to the curb. And it was crazy making, and it made it really hard to focus and get things done, because she was getting in the way of all of that. So what I want to do with my mom is I want to try to do all the things that my dad didn't have in place. It was really difficult to get my mom to do it because she wasn't like, hey, I want to get this done. She's very timid, very I don't want, if it's upsetting to me, I don't want to think about it, I don't want to talk about it. So it literally was like pulling teeth. It took literally a few years before we even got to her finally signing the paperwork and getting it done. Then she forgot something really important, and now that's not on there. So I don't know if I have to draw it back up again, but I'm sorry, I'm not getting to my question. I'm just, emotions are kind of high right now.
It's okay.
In terms of burial insurance, because is it even worth looking into or getting burial insurance, or just saving up the money and hoping you have that amount covered for when it comes? Because that was a big issue with the siblings, and I don't want my sister to take control over everything because I already know how she is, and she's going to just come at me full throttle. I want to have everything done, or at least almost, so that there's no, because I'm the power of attorney and I'm on the advance directive, which is good, but I just don't want to have any little loops or any holes for her to just come through and take over. Um, so I'm wondering, would you guys recommend the burial insurance in the meantime, like to start now, or is that even worth it?
Um, I think that as power of attorney, since you're the designated, she can't just come in and do anything. I don't think that you need to fear that. However, to answer your question, one thing that my parents did, which was like, smart, they just went directly to, here in Los Angeles, it's Forest Lawn, in Hollywood, and they bought their plot there, and over the years they paid for it. So once my mom passes, she has a plot right next to my father, and I don't have that expense. There are other smaller expenses of, like, if we're having a small ceremony there, in their chapel, or I think there are like a few other possible incidental expenses, but that part I don't have to worry about. So if it's something that that you can do, just outright getting rid of the middleman, the insurance company, and going directly to, you know, where it is that she wants to lay to rest, and buying a plot there. I would suggest that, and that's just from my personal experience. Trying, what would you say?
I didn't know that burial insurance existed. So, but my family was like, let's see, oh, Costco sells cheap caskets, things like that. And yeah, and I think obviously talk with the lawyer, but because you're a power of attorney, that's kind of like the person they look at, because legally you are the one that is allowed to make the decision. Now, will your sister give you a hard time, even though legally that's what the funeral homes, the banks, and they'll look at you? But it's like, will your sister still give you a hard time? Probably. But in terms of like legal things and being able to take care of things, though, you are the power of attorney. And that's why I do agree with Terri, where I'm like, I wouldn't fear too much about that, because it's like you can, with the power of attorney, I feel like you can make, because I'm the power of attorney as well, you can kind of make the final call.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, thank you for both of you for that. It wasn't so much, because I know that's a safety net, being a power of attorney in the advance directive. It was more so because in terms of income and finances, she has the most money in the family. She makes the most money. And so it was more of like a financial thing where I know she could go, well, you can't afford to pay for it. So if you want me to pay for it, then, and then, so that's kind of where my concern was coming from. But yeah, thank you for the information. I didn't mean to go all over the place. I'm sorry. Other people want
No,
to.
it's okay.
It's okay.
Because someone's gonna listen and be like, that's my situation too.
Mhm.
From all the nodding in this Zoom group, I can tell that there's a sibling that's just
We all have a sucky sibling. The common grounds.
Yes. So, and it's hard when you're like, oh, they're getting the other half of everything, and they're not going to do any of the work, and they're not gonna, and you have to deal with the mental stress, the family politics that is coming after you, like when that happens. So, yeah, but at least we all know that we're not the only ones, like you said, sucky siblings.
Yeah, and when you're making the decisions, I think it's important to make them from a good place within you and not making them out of fear. Because fear clouds our mind and never allows us to really enact what it is that is of the highest good. And so coming about it, from that place of thinking about what the highest good is, not fear, thinking about what the highest good is, and then feeling good that you made the decision that you felt was right. That's what's most important. Because when it all comes down to it, you are left with the decisions that you make, right? So, as opposed to looking at it from a viewpoint of fear, look at it from a viewpoint of empowerment. I know what they want. I understand, from this viewpoint, and I think that this is the best. And when you say, I think, I feel, get quiet and let it sit. Then you know that you've done the best that you can do. And that's all you can do. It's just do the best that you can do.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You're right. Thank you.
Thank you
Terri
for
told me
sharing.
the same thing too when I told her about my situations. Like, don't make decisions out of fear. And I'm like, thank you for that reminder.
I did it.
Oh, okay. So I think I'm going to take us through meditation to close out for the night. Again, I want to let you know, connect with Terri. I'll put her social media links here and her website. So she launched her business. So there you go. Yeah. So connect with Terri here at Mystic Muse by Terri.com.
Shout
Okay.
out to you, Trent.
Oh, thank you.
Because of you that I got to this point. So thank you.
Oh, I'm very excited. And then also just some quick announcements is that for future events, there's coming up is breathwork and Reiki energy healing and happy hour, and also my grief relief live program. We are starting next week, or connecting at least next week. And for those who are joining, we are about to finish up with grounding with a meditation, but I'm going to email this playback video to everyone so you can see what you missed and have any links to the resources. And I know like some people might have come late because maybe the time zone, they might have got switched up. So yes. And again, I'm going to email this playback to everyone. So, and it's going to be on YouTube. So you can share these resources with other people that will eventually run into the same situation as us. So, and again, feel free to connect with us if you have more questions, if you run into more problems or like need someone to talk to, because we kind of have a common ground here. People dying and sucky siblings. Okay.
Well picked.
Yes. It feels a lot less daunting when other people are going through it too.
Yes.
Okay, so let me get my tech all started and share my music here. So you can stay seated for this and close your eyes for this meditation here. Let's get the music at the right volume. Okay. Okay, and hopefully you can hear the music. It'll eventually get louder. but you can sit back in a comfortable position and close your eyes. And we'll begin by taking a deep breath in and out. In and out. Last time, breathing in and out with an audible sigh. And notice the parts of your body feeling heavy. Feeling grief. Taking a deep breath in and out. And imagine standing alone at the beginning of a path. The sky is gray, covered in clouds. And slinging over your shoulders is a heavy backpack. As you stand and take a look at the ground, take a moment to acknowledge the quiet burden that you've been carrying for a long time. The worry, the stress, anger, resentment, guilt, or sadness. The quiet tears you shed at night, or the tears you wipe away during the day to keep on working. The times you wonder if you will get a break. The tiredness you've been feeling for a long time now. And imagine each of these moments, each of these emotions as a large stone, dropping into your backpack, one by one. All these heavy stones that have been weighing you down. Now, with a deep breath in, you take your first steps on this path. The air is thick with fog, and you can barely see far up ahead. And as you take a few more steps, you see someone. As you get closer, you realize this is a very special person. That very special someone who once helped you when life felt too heavy to bear. Someone that was there for you. Could be a family member, a friend, a coworker, or even a stranger. Could be living or someone who's passed. And as you reach them, the path you're walking on starts to light up. And that special someone approaches you with open arms, offering you a warm hug. And they go into your backpack and remove a rock from your bag, holding it with care. And they say, "Don't worry, I got you. You're okay. Keep going." You keep walking down that path. And you encounter another familiar face. Someone who had held your hand through difficult times. They hug you tightly. They take another rock, another burden from your load. And they tell you, "Don't worry, I got you. You're okay. Keep going." You encounter more people along the way. And as you keep on walking, you notice the path gets brighter. The clouds start to fade. The fog lifts more and more as you keep going. More and more people hop up on your path, each taking a rock from your backpack, lightening your load. And they tell you, "Don't worry, I got you. You're okay. Keep going." And with tears in your eyes, you whisper to each of them, "Thank you. Thank you." As the weight in your body begins to lift. Take a deep breath in and out, feeling the heavy weights releasing from you. Finally, as you reach the end of the road, you are met with a gathering of all those who love you, who care for you, who have been there for you in the past when you were at your lowest, when you were struggling, when you had a hard time picking yourself up again. They all surround you with open arms. One person steps forward and gently lifts the entire backpack off your shoulders, placing it aside. "We love you, and we're here to take the weight off you," they say as they hug you. It's okay to cry. It's okay to feel this way. We see how much you've been in pain. You're never alone. And we'll walk with you every step of the way, right beside you. Tell us what we need or what you need. You're gonna be okay. We've caught you. You're not alone in this journey. Friends, loved ones, and even strangers stand by your side, reminding you that you are loved, that you are seen, and that you are not defined by your grief. That it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to ask for support. And let's take a final deep breath in and out. Feeling lighter and lighter. Gently bring your awareness back to the present moment, tapping your fingers, wiggling your toes. And when you're ready, you can slowly open your eyes. You're welcome, Johnny. Thank you. Thank you everyone for showing up. Thank you, Terri, for coming to speak about, what you're going through right now. Definitely make sure to check her out. Any final questions or anything before we hop off for the evening? Been a joy. Honestly, even though for a topic that's really heavy, it's been quite a joy doing this. So, yeah. Thank you everyone for showing up.
Thank you, Trang. This is just
Yeah.
amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you. Oh,
Thank you, Trang. Thank you, Terri. This was
yeah.
really great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. It was really an eye-opening for me, so thank you so much.
Well, have a good night, everyone, then. Keep in touch.
Bye.
Bye.
Take
You.
Thank
Bye.
you.